When I was a child, I was able to attend a good school. So good meaning it was in a middle-class neighborhood. It was reasonably integrated among socioeconomic and racial diversity. But even so, only a few years into elementary school, it was very clear that if a teacher didn't know me or a substitute teacher came to school and there was any kind of talking or disruption in my area of the room, I was the one that was doing it. That was the assumption. I knew that I had to prove myself. I had to take the initiative to prove that I was gifted, to prove everything, because they would never just assume that I was gifted or well behaved or anything. And that made me so angry. I remember every time something like that would happen, I would just think, wow, like, how can you be so unfair? Like, I saw how you treated that person and it wasn't the same way you treated me. And I promised myself that as an adult, I would never treat children in unfair ways. And I grew up and I became a teacher, and I taught at a bad school, which means that it was in a low-income neighborhood with pretty much 100% low-income students, and it was about 2/3 Black and 1/3 Hispanic. And as a requirement, as a beginning teacher, I had to go to observe an exemplary teacher. And in my school district, the exemplary teacher was a teacher who was at a good school, which was a majority white, some diversity, a little bit of diversity, but pretty much predominantly white, and a school that had more resources. I was a little bit doubtful that I could actually learn things that would be applicable to my classroom. But I went and I observed, and what I saw was that the school, first of all, her classroom had great resources. Her parents were able to afford resources that the children need, and that's great for them, something I didn't have access to. But as I observed her managing her classroom management, an incident occurred. There were 3 students who were disrupting class, 1 white girl, 1 white boy, and 1 Hispanic boy. And her response was very different for each of those students. So the white girl got sent out, she didn't get a consequence. It was just she called her name, she was free to go. She focused on the boys, and the white boy was able to make his case for why he shouldn't be in trouble, and he didn't even seem bothered or flustered by the situation at all. He made his case, got a slight slap on the wrist, not literally, of course, and then he was able to go. The rest of the class was at recess. But the Hispanic boy, she wouldn't even let him speak. He tried to start to talk, to make his case. She shut him down completely. And she called his mom, and he was crying on the desk because he knew he was gonna get a serious punishment. And I was so mad. I'm sitting here observing, and I'm feeling all these feelings that I felt from when I was a child and how it was so unfair. And I started to interrupt and say, you can't do that, that's so unfair. But then I stopped, and I realized that in the world, this boy would not be treated the same as his peers, his white peers. And was it better for him to learn it in this classroom, in this good school, or out on the street with the police? What would the consequences be there? And I sat there and I didn't do anything because I was not sure which action would be more protective of him. And that's something that really bothered me. And all I know is that those shouldn't be the options. The options for kids of low-income backgrounds, kids of color, should not be you go to a bad school that has no access to resources and the teachers are less able to meet their needs because of that, or they go to a good school where their spirits are broken because from an early age they are learning that they value and they matter less. And I think that Montessori could be a huge part of that answer if equity is a principle that's incorporated into how we approach that, because I believe it's important to raise children of color to be prepared for the reality we live in, which can be very difficult for them, but at the same time, their spirits don't have to be broken and they don't have to be devalued.